Hello, everybody. How you all doing? Oh, going on. So, before we get into things, obviously this is all about Nigel Farage. Order of business is going to be that I'm going to go through all the stuff that I want to present. I've got some screenshots, video to play, that sort of thing. I'll have a look at the comments, see if anybody's got any views on it, and then I'll drop the link in the chat. And if anybody wants to come in and have a talk like we did in the stream last night, then you're quite welcome to. So, first off, nothing related to Julie Hartley Brewer at the minute. Sorry, Nigel Farage. But this was Julie Hartley Brewer's take on things today. So this is what she said about people basically taking Trump's side on the Ukraine matter. So she said this: to all the ex-folk backing Trump on Ukraine, if you don't care about Ukraine or other people being murdered, raped, tortured by their Russian invaders, then be honest about it. But don't pretend that you only want the killing to stop. You're just embarrassing yourselves. Now, I don't even understand what she's talking about in this regard. I really don't. She's just crazy, because the majority of people that support Trump want peace in Ukraine, don't we? So I have absolutely no clue what Julie Hartley Brewer is talking about here, because everybody that's taking Trump's side wants peace in Ukraine. We don't want this war to keep going on because it's putting everybody else at risk. Just a really, really bad take on things, in my opinion. Yeah, I'll come to comments in a minute. So the meat of this live stream is going to be this. It's obviously Nigel Farage and his new stance of that him thinking that Ukraine should join NATO, which is just insane, because there is no way Putin is going to come to the negotiating table with NATO being, with the Ukraine being in NATO as part of the deal. That's never going to happen. And it just seems to me like Farage he just jumps on a bandwagon just to be relevant. We've got two-tier here, now we've got flip-flop Farage, because he flip-flops about the place on issues all the time. So this was his take. This is what he said back in 2024. So this is what he said. Nigel Farage has been criticized for suggesting the West provoked Russia's invasion of Ukraine by expanding the European Union and NATO military alliance eastwards. Now, you can read the rest of this if you want to read it, but that's his stance in 2024. Now, in 2024, Nigel Farage, this was in June, so he wasn't running to be the next government then, which I find really interesting. It seems that Farage changes his stance to fit in with the establishment every single time. He's not a principled person, in my opinion. He'll do a U-turn just to be popular on a certain subject. He did it today. There was a big stink because it was asserted that JD Vance, Vice President JD Vance, had said that we hadn't fought in any wars. Britain hadn't fought in any major wars in the past 30 or 40 years. And then Farage jumped in and made a rash statement without having the full facts on what had actually been said. JD Vance hadn't actually mentioned Britain or anything. And Farage was just made to look a fool, because he doesn't give a measured response to anything. He just reacts to everything in an aggressive manner. Whereas the other people, Keir Starmer didn't even make a comment. Kemi Badenoch, she basically came out with the facts and said that's not what he said, and so it was Farage left on his own, looking like a fool. There's a short in my video section. Go and check it out on that if you want to go and see what all that was about. But Farage just seems to be flip-flopping about on issues, and he isn't leadership. Just isn't leadership material, and neither is Tice. And I said this in the live stream last night. The Reform Party is great. I could get behind them but for the fact that it's Tice and Farage that are running things, and obviously Zahir Yousaf as chairman. Get rid of those three people from Reform. Get Ben Habib in. Get Rupert Lowe in there, and you'll have a real driving force for this country. Until that happens, I can't get behind Reform, and I will be voting UKIP in any upcoming elections. But that's just me. I just can't get behind Farage. I just can't. The man's an idiot. He really is. So we'll see what we can do with this. I don't know how this video is going to play. I tried it earlier, and it was dodgy. So we'll see how it goes.
The mineral deal is not enough on its own, but can I just remind him, Russia is the aggressor. Zelensky is a war leader whose country has been invaded, and we should all be supporting him.
Yeah, so that didn't play very well, but the point of that was Nigel Farage was like a nodding dog to everything that Keir Starmer was saying in that speech. I don't know what was worse, the fact that Keir Starmer would sound like a robot, as he always does, or the fact that Nigel Farage was nodding his head at everything that Keir Starmer was saying. Now, we covered all this last night in last live stream about who was the aggressor regarding the current situation in Ukraine, and it wasn't President Putin. Now, I don't agree with Putin. I don't like his government or anything like that. I don't like Zelensky's government. But you have to look at the situation. And Putin wasn't the aggressor. It was Zelensky. And there's a definite timeline. I'm going to make a video about this tomorrow to clarify things a little bit more. But Nigel Farage isn't the man that we all think he is, unfortunately. He's not. He really isn't. He's somebody in the comments said that the only reason we've got Reform is because they're there to stop a real grassroots right-wing party from springing up, and they're just like a placeholder to take that place, so no bigger parties can actually take it. I don't know. It's right. I'm gonna have a look at some other things, because the major red flag for me regarding Nigel Farage is way back when we had the pandemic. This was my first red flag, that Farage wasn't exactly the person that he claimed to be. And it's about to load. Right. Nigel Farage calls for Tony Blair to become vaccination czar. This was my first red flag. As soon as I heard this, I was like, what? And that's when people, even back then during the pandemic, were saying that he's controlled opposition with this. And anybody that saw this at the time, it was like, what are you talking about? Anybody that was opposed to the vaccine or anything like that was thinking, what are you doing? You know, Tony Blair isn't, the embodiment of evil on this planet, basically. And here we have Nigel Farage saying that he should be in charge of the vaccine rollout. It's just insane. Like I was saying before, Nigel Farage isn't the person that he claims to be. He's not our saviour. The Reform Party definitely is not our saviour. So we're going to upload some other stuff, some other interesting things. There's his take on Ukraine that is just... I just couldn't believe some of the things he's actually been saying. Right, so this was his post from the other day. The breakdown in talks and aid between the US and Ukraine only helps Putin. I hope Keir Starmer can use his new role to bring the two together soon. So the breakdown in talks and aid. So what exactly has all this money done for Ukraine? All the arms we've sent there, or the billions of pounds in aid. What has it actually done to help Ukraine fight the war? They're losing. It doesn't matter how much aid we give to these people, they are going to lose that war. They will lose. So I don't even know what Nigel Farage is talking about here. And from the sounds of it, he sounds like his establishment. He just wants the aid and the weapons to keep going in to Ukraine. He doesn't understand why Donald Trump has cut off the aid in the first place. It's to force Zelensky back to the peace talks table. That's what it is. That's what he's doing. And if Nigel Farage doesn't understand that tactic, he's not going to be a very good prime minister, is he? This is what's worrying me. I don't take any notice of people's words. It's their actions and how they react to certain situations is how I judge people. And Nigel Farage is not going to be a great prime minister. He flip-flops about. He's indecisive. He's reactionary, as we've seen. And he was like a nodding dog to Starmer in Parliament when they were calling Putin the aggressor, when that simply isn't true. It's not. It's factually not true. It's not that I'm on Putin's side or anything like that. The fact of the matter is he did not start the war in Ukraine. It was years and years. They promised him when the Soviet Union collapsed, it wasn't Putin, but they promised the leaders at the time of Russia that they would not move eastward. NATO would not move eastward towards the Russian border. And what's happened over the last 40 years or so? They've encroached. Now they're talking about having Ukraine as a member of NATO, which is directly on the border with Russia. The same happened with Georgia. They wanted Georgia to join NATO, and we had a war there. Tomorrow I'm going to make a video. I'll make a video, and you will see the timeline of events as they happened, and it's a real eye-opener. It really is. Right, so we'll have a look at some of the comments. But like I said, guys, Farage is not the person you think he is. Have we actually got any Reform people who are members of Reform or vote in Reform? So look at some of the comments. Farage digs himself a deep hole every time he opens his mouth. Just lately. Yeah, exactly. He does. I said exactly the same today about flip-flop Farage. The thing about the Reform Party is they don't have any kind of set policy for any of them. So you've got 5 MPs that are representing Reform, all saying different things on the same subject. And it's just confusing because it's like, are they actually cohesive, or have they all just got, different ideas about how things should be done? And if you're going to be a proper party, you need to be united and all be saying the same thing and want to achieve the same goals. We've got Rupert Lowe, who's talking about he wants mass deportations of illegal immigrants. And then on the other hand, you've got Nigel Farage as leader of the party saying that it's a political impossibility. It's that the whole party seems to be disjointed, and there doesn't seem to be any cohesion at the minute in what they're saying with things. Zelensky has backed down now. He said he wants to meet Donald Trump and work under his leadership. Yeah, because he knows exactly what's going to happen. If America pulls out and says, right, we're not helping you anymore, then he knows his country is going to fall within a matter of days. It would have anyway, because there's no way we could have kept supplying money to him. The party is controlled opposition. Everybody keeps saying that. And the more, the more I see of Nigel Farage and Richard Tice and Zai Youssef, the more I think that's true. Because don't get me started on Richard Tice. He reminds me of a game show host, but without the charisma. That's what Richard Tice reminds me of. And the only reason Nigel Farage keeps Richard Tice round as deputy leader of the party is because he knows he's no threat. He's no threat. Nobody wants Richard Tice to be leader of the Reform Party. So that's why he's safe in that position. And we've got to look at the situation that's happened over the last few months. We had Ben Habib. He was basically forced out of the Reform Party. He was given the boot because Zahir Youssef was to become chairman. They should have really made Ben Habib chairman of the party instead of just getting rid of him, because they've lost a really good person there. But I think that a lot went off behind the scenes there. I think that Ben Habib and Nigel Farage clashed, and he had to go because obviously Nigel Farage's ego, he can't have anybody else around him that's more popular than he is. And Rupert Lowe needs to bear that in mind. The only reason Rupert Lowe hasn't been given the boot is because he's an MP and they don't want to reduce their numbers in Parliament. Farage said months ago about poking the bear with Putin, and he's running scared now since they said he was pro-Putin. What does that tell you? Exactly. He's a weak leader. He's weak. He just bows down to the press and he just says what he thinks they want him to say. And that's not a leader. Not words. Bluebell just saw Elon's X post on the actions now, words. Actions now, words are what matter. Oh, okay. Not words. Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop the link in the chat. If anybody wants to come in and have a chat, can do. Like I did last night. I had Enoch in last night. I had Jerry. Was it Jerry? Was his name? I think his name was Jerry. He came in last night. And last off, we had a guy called Harry, who also came in. So don't be shy. Come and have a chat. Right, I'm going to post that into the chat. Right, so the link to join. Kenny, that was it. Thanks, Steve. Kenny. Yeah, Kenny. Thanks for reminding me, guys. Yeah, Kenny. Yeah, so if you want to come and have a chat, feel free to do so. So we're talking about Nigel Farage and his absolute balls up today when he just jumped straight on the bandwagon and accused JD Vance of getting things wrong when Nigel Farage thought he said that Britain was basically backward in warfare and hadn't fought a war in 40 or 50 years, which is not what JD Vance actually said. He didn't say anything like that. He didn't even mention Britain in that statement. We had Kemi Badenoch. She basically said, no, he didn't say that because she was informed. And Keir Starmer just didn't make a comment. He just didn't say anything, which is probably the wise thing to do. If you're not sure of the facts, you're best off just saying to the reporter, I don't have all the facts. I haven't heard anything about this yet. But when I've got the full facts, I will make my comment. But he didn't. Farage just reacts straight away without thinking about what he's saying. It's not a measured response. He just blurts it out. And now he looks a fool. And now he looks a fool to JD Vance as well, because it looks like he's having a go at him. And it basically, it confirms what Elon Musk was saying, that he's not leadership material. He's not. Nigel Farage isn't leadership material. Yes, he did lots of great work in the European Parliament. He made lots of great speeches. And he gave it to the people in that parliament. But that's all he's done. Yeah, he forced the vote on Brexit, but Brexit wasn't done. It wasn't completed. Exactly. Farage probably heard it third hand. But if you've heard it third hand, then you shouldn't say anything until you've got your facts. And I think it was a reporter. It was actually a reporter asking him a question, directly asking him about what he thought. And obviously he'd not been informed, or he'd not seen what JD Vance had actually said, and he just came straight out and just condemned JD Vance without actually confirming it or verifying it. Candidates who've resigned from the Reform Party know exactly what's going on. Even they've said they're under bad management. Yeah. And people have said in the comments tonight on here that Reform is like a placeholder party. It's to stop an actual right-wing party from rising in the ranks, a right-wing party that can't be controlled, that's grassroots, that is made up of the people, from forming, because everybody's throwing their weight back behind Reform. And the only reason I'm having a go at Reform and Nigel Farage and Tices is because I can see a repeat of 2019 happening, where we all put our faith in Boris Johnson. He was going to be the new Churchill. He was going to step in. He was going to save the country. He was going to reform the country. And what happened? He was a complete and utter disappointment. And he ended up basically making things worse for our country in the end. And I can see the same thing happening with the Reform Party under Nigel Farage. I really can. You know, we didn't see the warning signs with Boris Johnson until it was too late. Well, this time I am seeing the warning signs, the massive red flags, that he flip-flops about on policy all the time, and he tends to go with the flow. He goes with the flow of the most popular opinion, and he just goes with it. That's what I'm seeing. Like I said, I don't pay attention to what politicians are saying. It's their actions and their reactions to situations that I pay attention to. Are they consistent? Are they consistent in what they're saying to situations all the time? And Farage isn't. He's not. He's not consistent. All they had to do was make a trade deal with the US. Exactly. And now we've got all these people coming out of the woodwork, European leaders saying, well, we want a seat at the peace negotiation table. And quite rightly, Trump has said, you've had 3 years. You've had 3 years to get Zelensky round a peace table. But they chose not to. They chose to keep the war going. They chose to keep feeding Ukraine money and arms to keep the war going in this deluded pretense that Zelensky and Ukraine could win this war against Russia. They can't. They can't win. Even with the help of the EU and European countries, they can't win this war on their own. That's why they're so desperate to get America involved in this war. They need America's backing because, as people have said on Twitter today, the technology that most of these countries use to go and attack a country is they need the US's help because of satellites and stuff like that, logistics. They need US help, and if they refuse to give that help, all that technology is worth nothing. And JD Vance was right. You know, you've got countries that just are not capable of making any kind of dent into Russia at all. They're just not. They're deluded. They talk a big game, but they're just not capable of taking on Russia. They're not. I agree. They will be a letdown. Yeah, exactly. Them forcing the law to require a deal on the EU stopped Brexit from happening, and no one seems to care. I didn't know about that. Have you seen them complaining at the Charlie 2 keeps getting stuck? Owl had no such issues. Yeah, Challenger 2, yeah. Yeah. The thing is, right, it's going to be a different type of warfare in Russia. It really is. In Ukraine, it's going to be a different type of warfare because it's going to be modern. everybody thinks of warfare as like two groups of soldiers on the ground having a go at it in trenches, like you would see in the First World War and stuff like that. It's simply not like that. Now with drone technology, you don't really have to put that many troops on the ground. Really, you just with Putin's suicide drones, you can just launch a swarm of these drones, and you can take out a lot of people with those things, hell of a lot of people. And I keep bringing it up, the hypersonic missiles. They're lethal. We've got nothing to defend against them. They can just take out our installations, no problem. Any command and control structures that we would put up in Ukraine to fight against Russia, he would take them out. He's already taken them out. He's already done it. We've had specialist soldiers units in there showing the Ukrainians how to use our missile systems. He's taken them out already. And it's like when I see it on the news and stuff like that, anybody would think that Russia's losing the war. They're not. They're in this for the long game. They can keep throwing, cannon fodder for a very, very long time. They can just keep throwing numbers at the battlefield because they've just got disposable troops. That's what Putin's like. He's got disposable amounts of troops where Ukraine hasn't. He will just win this war by attrition. He will just kill all of the Ukrainian army, and he will still have soldiers in bucket loads to spare. That's what will happen. He's used them in Ukraine. He's used them in Ukraine to take out command and control structures. We need to keep an eye on China just sitting in the background. Yeah, they are really going to take advantage of this situation. You do know there's a difference between the ICBCMs and hypersonic, don't you? Yeah, they are hypersonic, but the hypersonic are way faster than the ICBMs. Way faster. Right, I dropped the link in the chat. Nobody's going to come in, so I'm going to call it a night on the stream. Nobody seems to want to come in tonight. I've said what I've got to say. Putin has already sold Ukraine. Yeah, he has. Yeah, Putin has already said Ukraine are not to join NATO. What is Farage thinking? No way will there be a peace deal with that statement. And Trump's already said, no, it's like Farage is going against Trump. He's jumping on a bandwagon again. This is what I keep saying. Farage is establishment through and through. He can be friends with Trump, but he's got his eyes set on number 10 Downing Street, and he'll say anything to get in that Prime Minister's position. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't care about reforming the country. The only thing Nigel Farage cares about is himself. And both Ben Habib and who was the Howard Cox, they've both said that the only thing that Nigel Farage cares about is himself and his profile and how he looks, his image. And who does that remind you of? Reminds me a lot of Boris Johnson. Right, I'm going to end it there tonight, guys. Hypersonic are traveling at low trajectory. Exactly. They're in atmosphere missiles. They don't have to go outside the atmosphere to strike their targets. They can. This is what people don't understand. They think that these are like the ballistic missiles you shoot out and go into space and drop down. They don't do that. These things can be dropped from planes. They can be dropped from planes, conventional planes. They don't need a launch system like an ICBM does. And they can both carry conventional weapons and they can carry nuclear capabilities as well. That's what makes them so dangerous. We don't have an ability to shoot these things down yet. They tried in Ukraine. They claimed to have shot one down, which they were lying about. They didn't do it. It's like we're going to have a bit of an argument in the chat. So can ours. Yes, we do. They don't, but we do. I think somebody's a little bit deluded in that respect. Right. I'm going to end the stream here because I've got nothing else to say. I'm out. I'm done. So I've said what I've got to say. Thanks everybody coming to watch, stuff like that. Nobody wants to come in the chat and have a chat, so I'm going to call it a night. Once I'm done, that's it. I've got nothing else to say. There's no point keeping it going. It was good last night because I had people that came in and we had a chat and stuff like that. So I shall see you all soon in the next video. Thanks for all coming. Thanks for watching. This is Vindicator signing off.